My daughter forgot to hang up the phone. That's when I heard it. He's becoming a burden. It's time for a nursing home. I didn't respond, but something inside me broke that day. Soon after, I sold the house, $890,000. They returned from their business trip all smiles, but the moment they reached the front door, the smiles disappeared. Their keys didn't fit anymore. A note was waiting for them on the porch. After reading it, their voices erupted in panic and anger. I knew then this wasn't over. This was only the beginning. But before I continue, make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. The phone rang just as I was scraping the last bit of meatloaf off my plate, Ellen's old recipe. Mine never tasted quite right without her touch. I checked the caller ID, Caitlin. Despite everything, I smiled. Hi, Dad, how are you holding up? Her voice had that familiar tenderness, the kind that always brought a mix of comfort and sorrow. I sank into Ellen's old recliner, the one she used to sit in every evening with a book. Oh, you know me, just had dinner, was about to catch the news. I didn't mention it was 3-day-old leftovers, or that I'd spent the last hour just staring at Ellen's photo on the mantel. Are you eating enough? Don't forget you can get groceries delivered. I showed you the app. I'm eating just fine, I said softly, though I did have a little scare yesterday. Forgot to turn the burner off under the coffee pot. Lucky I smelled it before anything bad happened. There was a silence. I could almost see her frowning, the same crease between her brows she inherited from her mom. Dad, maybe we need to talk about someone checking in on you more often. Jeremy thinks I'm fine. I replied, how's Phoenix? The conference going okay? Yeah, it wraps tomorrow. Jeremy's been handling client meetings. I've been stuck in digital marketing lectures all day. She gave a short, strained laugh. Anyway, we've got dinner plans tonight with potential investors. I should go. Of course, sweetheart. I love you. Love you too, Dad. Take care of yourself, okay? Click, then, a rustling sound. She hadn't ended the call. I reached to hang up, and then I heard them talking. Muffled but clear enough. You saw how he's slipping, right? Caitlin's voice was cooler now, professional. He left the stove on. What if something happens? Jeremy replied, calm and clinical. It's time to move him into a home. He's not safe alone anymore. He's a good man. Caitlin said, her tone shifting, but he's a liability. The house is worth nearly $1 million. In Denver's market, maybe more. Jeremy agreed. We sell, get him into a decent place that doesn't cost too much, and we can finally buy that Boulder place we wanted, the one with the view. Then Caitlin laughed. She laughed. You should have seen him tonight, Jeremy. So grateful I called. Has no clue we're planning this. The more time passes, the more confused he'll get. We should act while he still trusts us. The phone dropped from my hand, landing with a loud thud on the hardwood floor. The same floors Ellen and I had installed with our own hands more than 2 decades ago. I sat frozen in silence, the last echoes of my daughter's laughter still ringing in my ears. I turned to Ellen's photo. Her gaze met mine, unreadable. Was it sorrow, disappointment, a warning, or just the knowing expression of someone long gone? The old grandfather clock Ellen gave me on our 20th anniversary ticked in the darkness. Crickets chirped outside in the garden she once tended, and I still cared for. But something inside me had changed. What warmth I'd felt hearing my daughter's voice had turned to something cold and solid. They thought I was fading, that I couldn't take care of myself, that I'd just hand over everything I'd worked for. But I wasn't gone yet, and I certainly wasn't as lost as they believed. I sat in the quiet, for what felt like hours, Ellen's portrait watching me from the side table. The house didn't feel the same anymore. It was like even the walls had heard her betrayal and were waiting for what came next. Eventually, I got up and turned on the lamp. Warm light spilled across the familiar space. The living room we'd built together, piece by piece. The burgundy couch where Caitlin once did her homework. The coffee table I crafted by hand in the garage while she played nearby. I went to the kitchen, opened the drawer where old receipts and papers lived, and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in years. Ellen always said to keep everything. You never know when it might matter. University tuition statements $48,000. I remembered those years. Back shifts, coming home covered in dust. Ellen massaging my shoulders while I paid the bills. Roy, you're working yourself to death. She once told me, she's smart, but don't give so much she forgets to be thankful. I should have listened. Wedding receipts $32,000. I told Caitlin we could afford $5,000, maybe $8,000 at most, she cried. Said it was her dream. I worked weekends for 6 months installing floors under the table just to make it happen. Daddy, you're the best father in the world. She whispered during our dance. She forgot, just like she forgot who helped her get that first car. Who pulled strings to get her a job after she couldn't find work for almost a year. Just like she forgot who paid all the bills when they moved in for a while after Jeremy got fired from his job. I never asked for rent. I paid for groceries, and now they think I'm disposable. Jeremy used to pat my back and joke that I was the most generous man in all of Colorado. Caitlin would hug me and say, Dad, we'll pay you back as soon as we're stable again. But that unstable phase had ended a year ago. They both had good jobs now, both earning more than I ever made swinging a hammer. Yet, not once had they brought up moving out or even mentioned repaying what they owed. I'd picked up the tab for their anniversary dinner just last month, over $200 at one of those upscale steakhouses downtown. Jeremy said they deserved to celebrate. When his BMW transmission failed, I covered the $3,000 bill and completely wiped out my emergency savings. At that barbecue a few weeks ago, I overheard him telling his friends, Roy's like a second father to me, with his arm draped around my shoulders. I really lucked out marrying into this family. At the time, I'd felt proud to be the dependable father-in-law, the one who always came through, no matter the cost. Later, I went upstairs to the bedroom Ellen and I had shared. It hadn't changed in 2 years. Her jewelry box still sat on the dresser, glasses folded neatly by her lamp. I opened the bottom drawer where we stored important papers and pulled out the original deed to our home. Purchased in 1999. No liens, no second names. Just mine now. Standing there in the room where Ellen had drawn her final breath, surrounded by decades of love and labor, I felt something shift inside. The pain was still there, sharp and relentless, but underneath, something harder was forming, resolve. They thought I was easy to manipulate, old, forgetful, compliant. They believed they could erase my life's work with a signature. I looked at the photograph of Ellen on the nightstand, and her eyes forever filled with quiet strength. Don't give her so much she forgets to say thank you. She had once warned me. She had been right. Well, Caitlin had forgotten. But she was about to remember and learn that her father wasn't as frail as she assumed. I opened the desk drawer in my office and pulled out a business card I'd kept for years. Todd Fisher, real estate attorney. Ellen had insisted we speak to him after her diagnosis to get everything in order. It was time to meet again. The next morning, I walked through my home with fresh eyes, but instead of seeing memories, I saw what Caitlin and Jeremy saw: square footage, market value, sellable space. In the kitchen, I ran my hand over the granite countertops I'd installed myself after long days at the construction site. Ellen had picked out that gray and gold speckled pattern. She used to brew coffee there every morning until the illness made her too weak to stand. I remembered the morning our daughter took her first steps, from the fridge to Ellen's arms, right here in this kitchen. We both cried. Ellen scooped Caitlin up and spun her in circles while I fumbled for the camera. "She's walking in our house," Ellen whispered, tears in her eyes. The home we built just for her. The living room had seen 25 Christmases. I could still picture Caitlin, age 7, lighting up at the sight of the dollhouse I'd secretly crafted in the garage. Ellen had sewn miniature curtains. "Daddy, it's just like our house," she squealed, and it was, right down to the tiny bay window. That window had cost me 6 months of overtime. Ellen had seen one in a magazine and loved the idea of curling up with a book. I taught myself how to cut complex angles, crawling around the frame for hours until my back gave out. Upstairs, Caitlin's childhood room was still painted the pale yellow she picked out for her 16th birthday. Photos from high school and college still covered the corkboard. This was the room where I'd rocked her to sleep as a colicky baby, where Ellen and I helped her with math homework at the small white desk I'd built to fit under the window. Then there was our bedroom, the hardest room to enter. Ellen's glass still sat by the bed. Her bookmark remained lodged in page 247 of the novel she never finished. Her clothes, still hanging neatly in the closet, still held the faint scent of her perfume. This was where we dreamed about the future. Where she died, hand in mine, "Don't let them use you." She'd whispered in her final days, "You're too kind, Roy. Promise me you'll take care of yourself." I hadn't kept that promise, not yet. In the office, I found the folder of old construction photos. Ellen had taken most of them. Me laying the foundation in '99, hauling beams, pouring concrete. Ellen, smiling in a hard hat, bringing lemonade to me and the crew. The financial records from those days told the rest of the story. Second mortgage, personal loans, Ellen taking a part-time job at the school district. We lived on rice and beans, drove beat-up cars, and sacrificed everything to build that house, our home. And now, our daughter wanted to sell it and tuck me away like an old piece of furniture. I picked up Todd Fisher's business card once more. The corners were worn from years of holding it, but the number was still clear. They thought I was done, out of the fight. They were wrong. I dialed. The next morning, I walked into Todd Fisher's modest brick office on Fairfax Avenue. He wasn't some fancy corporate lawyer. He helped people like me. I wore my best suit, the same one I wore to Ellen's funeral. Hands only slightly shaking, I signed in. Todd was in his mid-50s, with a calm, measured way about him. His shelves were filled with law books and family photos, a life like the one Ellen and I had once built. "Mr. Hayes," he greeted me warmly. "Good to see you again. I'm so sorry about Ellen." "Thank you," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I need your help with something delicate. It's about my daughter and her husband." Todd listened as I told him everything with the phone call I overheard. The plans to move me out and sell the house. He didn't interrupt, just shook his head at all the right moments. Sadly, Mr. Hayes, you're not the only one. I see this more often than you'd like to believe. Once assets are involved, some adult children start thinking like investors, not family. But legally, they can't touch anything, right? Todd nodded. That's correct. Since the house is solely in your name, they have no legal standing. They can't sell it. They can't force you into assisted living. They can't even access your finances unless you give them power of attorney. Relief flooded me, but behind it, a sharper realization. If I wanted to sell, I could do it today. Todd saw it in my expression, thinking of selling. I thought of Caitlin's laughter, of Jeremy's greed, of everything reduced to dollar signs. They think I've lost my edge. I said quietly, but maybe it's time I show them I haven't. After an hour discussing paperwork and next steps, Todd confirmed he could prepare everything by the next day if I wanted to move forward. I handed him $200 in cash for the consultation. Walking out into the spring sunlight, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Caitlin again. For once, I smiled. She'd be wondering why I wasn't picking up right away. Let her wonder. By the time I got home, her call had ended. But I knew she'd try again. She always did when she needed something. Sure enough, not long after, the phone rang again. I saw her name glowing on the screen and calmly walked over to answer. Dad, there you are, she said, overly cheerful. I was getting worried. Just out running errands, I said, keeping my voice warm. How's the trip? Great. We actually have something exciting to tell you, she said, pausing. Jeremy and I have planned a little getaway for you. I tensed, gripping the phone tighter. There's this place, a beautiful retreat with full-time staff. Medical professionals, just in case. It's like a vacation spot. You deserve it, Dad. Medical staff. Vacation? They really thought I wouldn't catch on. That's very thoughtful, sweetheart, I replied. You didn't have to go to so much trouble. Of course we did, she chirped. Jeremy's voice chimed in from the background. Everything's already arranged. When are you thinking? I asked, already knowing. Next Friday, Caitlin said. You'll just need to pack the basics. You know, clothes, a few personal things. Just the basics, not the memories, not the furniture I built with Ellen. Just enough to be quietly forgotten. Well, I said, I've got a surprise of my own for you too when you get back. Oh, what is it? You'll see. Been working on it since we last talked. I think you'll be very surprised. You're so. I glanced at the clock. It was a little after noon. 3 o'clock would work perfectly. Let me text you the address, I said, then hung up. The sudden hush of my own kitchen was oppressive, filled with the realization of what I'd set into motion. In just 3 hours, a stranger would walk through the home Ellen and I built together, chalking our memories up in dollars and cents. I spent the next 2 hours scrubbing and dusting, an echo of the routines Ellen used to enforce whenever guests were expected. Only this time, I wasn't preparing for visitors. I was preparing for judgment. At exactly 3, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my shirt, inhaled the faint scent of lavender from sachets tucked in my closet, and reached for the brass knob I'd installed 15 years ago. Beyond this threshold lay my profoundest hope, or my downfall. I opened the door. There stood Brian Connor, looking just as his profile picture promised, polished, composed, early 40s, carrying a leather portfolio and tablet. His eyes widened as he stepped inside, taking in the hardwood floors, the crown molding, the warm light streaming through the bay window. This is exactly what I hope to see, he said. Soon he was snapping photos, inspecting every detail. I found myself recounting my handiwork with a quiet pride, installing the oak 3/4, inch floors in 2001, the custom granite countertops that echoed golden sunlight, details I still remembered measuring and fine-tuning by hand. Brian gently admitted that he'd rarely seen a property kept with such care. My old engineer's creed of doing things right had shown clearly. He measured, documented, and pulled up market comps on his tablet. Homes here had been fetching between $850,000 and $920,000. Given this home's condition and custom work, he recommended a listing price of $890,000, quick sale potential and top dollar. I sank into Ellen's reading chair, the number echoing in my mind. "You've got a real treasure here," Brian said. A local investment group specializing in high-quality rentals was ready to make a cash offer. No financing, no endless negotiations, a closing in 10 business days. That meant they'd move fast before Caitlin and Jeremy could return from Phoenix and find me ready to be managed. I asked, "Why so quick?" Brian smiled. "Cash deals skip loan paperwork and appraisals. We can move fast, and your home's in better shape than new builds." He offered flexibility too. I could stay up to 30 days after closing. I agreed, with a bright hint of something triumphant in his expression. Brian called the investors on the spot. Their interest was immediate. He promised draft paperwork by tomorrow morning. That evening, the golden sunset filtered through Ellen's custom window panes. Instead of sadness, I felt anticipation, even control, the kind I'd lost the day I overheard my daughter's betrayal. "How does 9 a.m. sound?" Brian asked. "Perfect," I replied. The next day, Brian arrived with contracts, a notary, and coffee. Like any good engineer, I scanned every line, comparing the figures to the blueprints of my life. The sale went through, $890,000 cash, a closing set for 10 business days and 30-day occupancy afterward. My heart was steady as I signed. Over the next 3 days, the paperwork sped ahead. Investors inspected, and a visiting team even praised the craftsmanship, thinking I was already gone. I spent nights browsing apartments, modest, comfortable spaces in Highlands, thinking about keeping Ellen's jewelry, the photo albums, everything that truly mattered. On day 8, Brian confirmed the wire transfer would arrive after closing. That night, I packed just one suitcase, ready to walk toward whatever came next. When dawn broke, I wore my navy blue suit, the one of happier milestones, and went to the title company's office. The closing was efficient, dignified. Then I watched as funds minus closing costs landed in my account. More than I ever imagined, more than they expected their burden to have. Driving home through familiar streets, past Caitlin's old school, our weekend park, I felt something I hadn't in years, not nostalgia, freedom. Back at the house, the title had transferred. The keys felt heavy in my hand, even though I still had one more day in the house before I had to leave. It was plenty of time for the final act. I drove to the nearby Starbucks and confidently called a locksmith. I'd changed those old brass locks first thing, no sign left that the man about to lose his home had planned an exit on his own terms. 2 hours later, I had new locks, modern, silent, mine. $450 in cash later, I held the new keys to the front door, the back door, garage. Nothing connected back to me. They were precise, clean, final. In that moment, I wasn't the grateful, compliant old man they expected. I was someone they had underestimated, someone sharp and deliberate, someone with a lifetime of groundwork and the freedom to rebuild, not on their terms, but on mine. Once Eddie departed, I found myself standing in an empty house, facing the most difficult task, condensing 25 years of life into only what I could carry with me. The very first items I tucked into my suitcase were Ellen's jewelry box, our wedding photographs, unfinished novel she left behind, the bookmark still on page 247, my engineering certifications, essential papers, and Ellen's beloved cookbook covered in her handwritten notes. Everything else stayed behind, the furniture that told our story, our family photo albums, and Ellen's clothes, still scented with her perfume. As I packed, I called Sunset Manor Apartments and explained my need for a furnished bedroom immediately. Mrs. Chen, the property manager, arranged a month lease that very evening. Within an hour, I was placing a deposit and first month's rent nearly $3,000, a sum that had once felt unthinkable to spend whimsically. Outside, Mrs. Patterson next door watched me load the car. Her wave reminded me of all the relationships I was severing, all the ties my daughter and son-in-law forced me to surrender. I walked one final time through each room. The kitchen where I taught Caitlin to bake holiday cookies. The living room where Christmas mornings were magic. The bedroom where Ellen took her last breath. That room hurt the most. "I'm sorry, darling," I whispered to Ellen's memory, "but this was necessary. You always warned me I gave too much." Then I locked the new locks and drove away, watching Maple Street fade from my rear-view mirror. As dusk fell, I arrived at Sunset Manor carrying only the essentials of the life I was choosing to continue. The new place was small, almost motel-like, functional, but impersonal. I placed Ellen's photo where I thought she belonged, on the nightstand. Then I called the one last piece of my plan into motion. Inside the apartment, I opened my laptop and began researching banks suited to managing an $890,000 deposit discreetly. Colorado Community Bank stood out, a smaller institution known for personalized, confidential service. I called their private banking division. Within moments, David Morrison offered an appointment for Monday at 9 a.m. A perfect timing. The weekend became a blur of unpacking one small suitcase. I placed Ellen's keepsakes in place, her jewelry box, our wedding photos, the novel with the bookmark at 247, and my certificates, grocery shopping, simple meals, nothing that demanded the warmth of a full kitchen. In a cafe not far from my new home, a barista named Sarah greeted me warmly. "Just moved in?" she asked. I replied simply, starting anew. Monday morning, in my best suit, I met with David at Colorado Community Bank. He was easy to talk to. I explained my backstory, a widower starting fresh, needing a secure, uncomplicated solution. By midweek, my funds had arrived, the account was active, and I felt a suffocating sense of relief and autonomy. Wednesday evening, I sat alone in my chair, not Ellen's, not the one where I'd overheard betrayal, just a plain chair in a plain room that was mine. I researched surveillance cameras, finally choosing a discreet mini camera disguise as a phone charger, motion activated and streaming live to my phone. It shipped overnight for about $149, money that would have constrained me weeks ago but now felt trivial. Next, I worked on a note for my daughter and her husband. Drafts ranged from furious to coldly detached. Finally, I settled on something balanced, dignified and final, honest and heartbreaking. Dear Caitlin and Jeremy, if you're reading this, it means my plan succeeded. I overheard your call about placing me in a nursing facility and calculating profit from selling our home. I have sold the house for $890,000 in cash and the funds are secure. I've relocated to a place where I am genuinely valued. Your possessions are in storage with Denver Moving and Storage. You have 30 days before fees begin. I gave you my all for 42 years, and you repaid me with betrayal. I hope it was worth it. Love, Dad. The note went inside a sealed envelope and was placed in a perfect view as the camera charge was hidden in the front hall outlet. I tested it ready. On Thursday, I revisited my former home one last time under the guise of visiting. Their suitcases and mail evidence they'd already moved in greeted me as I repositioned the charger. The house still smelled like lavender and lemon oil, memories hanging in every corner. By Thursday night, I had tested the camera, ensured motion detection was armed, and waited. Friday morning, I sat with coffee, phone open to the feed. By 5:15 p.m., their black SUV rolled in the moment it arrived. Caitlin stepped out first, confident and casual. Her key wouldn't turn. Jeremy tried windows, nothing unlocked. Panic crept in. Dad doesn't even know a locksmith, Caitlin said. He's confused. Jeremy tried to rationalize. I watched them break in through the unsecured window and find the envelope. Their expressions moved from bewildered to horrified to fury as they read. They shouted, "He sold the house, kept all the money." My daughter wept. Jeremy realized he was out, maneuvered, "Call a lawyer," she cried. "He can't just do this." "With what money?" He shot back. "I lost my job 6 months ago, and the market isn't hiring people with my record." Watching them collapse amidst the furniture I built, I turned off the camera. In the kitchen, I opened a bottle of our treasured 2018 Bordeaux. I raised a glass to Ellen's image. "To you, my love." Justice delivered. The wine tasted like victory. Later, I deleted a text from an unknown number, probably Caitlin, then powered off the phone. From my apartment, I looked out at the Denver skyline, glowing in evening light. Somewhere in that house were people realizing that their burden had become their worst mistake. For the first time since Ellen passed, I felt unburdened. I was myself again. Free. Roy Hayes had left that house forever, and he was never looking back.